All right, so some critical points to make about surviving Team Lab effectively, and how to get through the group and get as much as you can out of it. So one simple point here I want to make that's extremely important and critical is to realize that it's a very complex group dynamic. We've got many people at different stages and levels of lifting experience and mastery and their goals. But it could be someone who's brand new on day one to a CrossFitter to a weekend warrior to someone who's getting ready for the national championships or beyond. And one thing that's really critical to understand is that we've got 1 to 3 coaches in there any time with any number of people. It's a different group every single time. But when I say make sure I see it, I'm very serious about that. When I say make sure I see your next set, it is hilarious to me, very frustrating to me also, how often that gets ignored. And it's probably 80 to 99% of the time I say that, do people actually grab me and get my attention to see the set. So the amount of help you can get in the coaching and progress and success you can get is limited by our ability to interact and communicate with you. So it's not, and I know that sometimes you may not feel comfortable and may be awkward asking, and you know that you don't want to bother us or whatever the case might be. Don't ever feel bad to ask me and grab my attention. I don't care what you have to say. When I tell you those words specifically, make sure I see it, I mean that very clearly, make sure I see it. And I get very frustrated when I miss the set because I'm trying to fix something in you, and I only got so many limited number of sets that I know you have energy for, and I know you want to get better yesterday, and so I need to see that next set and that opportunity to build to the next level. So when I train someone one-on-one and I work with them in that scenario, I can see every single set, every single movement, and I can clean up and very tightly and dial in someone's form and positions very clearly and quickly. But when I'm doing this with a full group and I got so many different problems and needs and scenarios that I'm organizing and trying to understand and make the best decisions for, when I miss those pieces, it gets very hard to do that. So that's why I say, make sure I see your next set. So I want to see everybody's sets of every single workout all day, and when I miss them, that's a less chance that I can to really help you. So no matter when a coach says that, please do that. And I don't care if you have to yell across the room, hey motherfucker, look at me now. You've been looking over on the other side of the room and I need your help and attention. I don't care what you have to do. Whistle, make noise. I cannot be perfectly attentive to 15 people at once. So I get caught up talking to one person, they're asking me a question, I'm writing their data down, and someone else I'm trying to keep an eye on at the same time, so I'm trying to balance all these plates at once. So all I need is just a little bit of feedback, interaction there, and just let me know when you're ready to go, and I'll be there in a second. So it does not bother me at all. I don't care what you do. You can throw stuff at me, yell my name, whistle, whatever it takes. Just please get my attention because I want to help you badly. And if I can't see your set, though, I can't do nothing for you. And you're just going to continue to suffer and get either miss reps, not clean up your positions and form, or get hurt or not progress to the ability that you want to. So I definitely mean that very sincerely. When I say make sure I see your next set, make sure I see it. Please and thank you. So another very important topic for surviving Team Lab is understanding how to survive the process and understanding your development short and long term and kind of what we're after in certain focus phases. So we're going to talk about the periodization that we go through here a bit and just sort of some of the goals that we're after and some of the things we're trying to form and build and what the priority is for each phase. And I think there's some things that are very misunderstood and that you have to realize in order to survive this as effectively and safely as possible. But at first, obviously, as you come in, we have programming listed on the blog, and we've got level 1, 2, and 3 and beyond training and programming that's very specific and detailed out for a reason, and it's programmed and periodized throughout the year. And we've got an accumulation phase, an intensification phase, a maximization phase, and a taper and peak phase. But as you come in, really it's very loose, and we're just trying to see where you're at. We're trying to get an assessment for what your problems and needs are, and we're just trying to give you the chance to come in and just practice and go through the movements and just let this form over time. So eventually we're just kind of stepping back and seeing how you do. Then things begin to form and build around you and get very specific. So what that loose protocol there becomes more structured to the Team Lab programming, and you really solidify yourself as a level 1, 2, or 3 athlete, or beginner, intermediate, advanced, and that determines which exercises you're doing, the type of exercise you're doing, the volume and intensity of the exercise you're doing, the organization and the workout order, and all those things are determined on that. And there's so many rhymes and reasons to that. And really, as we get to know you, that's why I actually have my big programming book, and I'm taking specific detailed notes on every single person there. And so you transcend beyond some of the Team Lab structured programming at many times. So we specialize that as we go, but that's only as good as the communication I get, the feedback I get, and when someone may miss a workout, that's important data that I'm not seeing. I don't know if you're adapting appropriately to the training, and we need to do more or less of something. When people are come at different times and things like that, and I miss it, that limits our ability to help you and my ability to help you, basically. So just so you know that, and know that there's missing pieces there, and the more I know, really the better. And really, no piece of information is irrelevant. So it's all relevant, basically. So tell me everything. It has a cause and effect to everything going on here, to your success or failure. Now, as you form and you get better at this, and you go through the beginner phases and you kind of progress through level 1, some organization and structure needs to happen for you to continue to progress. That could be in strength training, that could be in technique, that could be positions. It's any large number of things, and we'll have other videos talking about each one of those specifically. But first and foremost, technique and positions have to be the most basic preliminary need. And if you override that, you're going to have long-term problems and technical errors, and you're setting yourself up for injury, because you're not going to be able to get in positions with heavy weight, with speed, and jumping to that position aggressively. And if you're getting into a suboptimal position there, that's where you're going to get beat up and injured, especially when you take the approach of you're coming in to hit a PR to max every single day. And that's another thing that's confused, is that we might have, it says ramp up to 1 RM for the day, but it's a technical 1 RM daily rep for that day. And although we give a 3 miss limit, that doesn't mean you have to miss 3 times. And sometimes it's appropriate, and sometimes we give more than 3 misses. And sometimes I say, well, you earned another shot, and that means that you got better in each rep, and they're good misses, and that you've earned the next attempt. So everyone's going to have more or less of this. But the more advanced some of our lifters get, the weights get so heavy, and they're so aggressive and great at actually attacking that weight, we need to hold you back a bit, because you can't go after those max attempts every single day. You're going to get beat up and hurt and injured. So there's a difference there, and the same answer is not the same for everybody, and the programming is not the same for everybody. And there's going to be different focuses and phases for everyone. So, for example, now that we're currently in a 3, 5, 7, 9 and a 10s wave, which is an accumulation phase, which is where we're doing a lot of higher rep stuff, working more on positions, basic raw strength training, and more of a conditioning sort of phase. So we're not actually trying to do as many high-end intensity 1 RM type sets, because the problem is you're going to be sore and stiff from all the strength training we're doing. And what we're doing is remodeling your entire body and restructuring things to make it a better system and making you better for the next wave of training. So doing a lot of hard, heavy lifts there, for one, are going to be uncomfortable and not feel good, because you're going to be stiff. So if you just did a bunch of heavy back squats on, say, Saturday or Wednesday, you're going to feel it in your next days. You're going to be slow, your adrenaline's going to be lower, your nervous system's going to be tanked a little bit. You're just not going to feel awesome, and you might feel very stale and lethargic. And you barely get through your lifts. You're going to wonder why you can't lift the XYZ weight, and you're 5 or 10 kilos weaker in the lift. But you go to the squats, and your squats are going well, and they're making progress. That's the goal of that phase. We're trying to get you stronger, and so the next 2 waves, the intensification, maximization, and perhaps taper and peak phase, we're building you, and so it's sort of this stepwise, tapered up peak cycle over and over and over. So we build you up, we break you down. We build you up, we break you down. We build you up and break you down. And so it's this constant rolling hills of progress. It's not a straight line of success to infinity. That's where beginners tend to live, and beginners will see a lot more early success early on, but that starts to then have to periodize and wave itself. And definitely there's weird things that happen, and you'll hit PRs, lifts in the accumulation phase where we're doing higher reps and things like that. It definitely happens, and sometimes it's simply delay from the last intensification or maximization block that just happened to fall into the next phase. And so it's got funny ebbs and flows and peaks, but it's also could be inconsistency in your training. You may have missed a few days, and you just might happen to have extra few days of rest, and so you lost your training effect of what we're trying to do, and you had this unplanned sort of organic peak to where you're just basically fresh, and so it was good, but it's bad in the big picture because our goal was something else at the time, and we weren't really trying to hit that lift in. If it's there, take it. You never know when PR is going to be there, and when the going's good, you want to make sure you hit it, and that's part of why we do this technical 1 RM on a very frequent basis. But it does not mean you have to hit a PR, and it does not mean you need to beat yourself up. It means what's the heaviest weight possible with the perfect positions possible that's appropriate for you and that's relevant to our current focuses and goals in parts of our training and programming. So some of you have such great technique right now that I don't care if you have any misses. I would love to see you go up and with no misses for that workout, call it a day, you feel good, you're not beat up, you're not taking any risky shots at hurting yourself, and we can save energy and focus and determination and all those things for your strength training, so we can really drive that side of the progress up. And so when we get into the, say, the intensification and taper and peak side of the fence, we can actually go after those big, hard, heavy lifts, and that's when it makes sense. And so it's cyclical. Otherwise, if you come in trying to hit that PR every single time, you know, you're going to fail a lot of times over and over and over, and it's just simply not appropriate or capable. If I've done this for over 20 years of training, I would have thousands of PRs, and I'd be lifting every world record humanly possible. So as a beginner, you're going to see more PRs, and they're kind of concurrent with strength and Olympic lifts. As an intermediate, you're going to start to see less and less PRs less frequently, and it's going to start to wave, and you might not see PRs for every several weeks through these focus phases that we go through. And as an elite or a very advanced lifter, you might not see a PR for several months to yearly, and the best lifters in the world do not see PRs for every 1 year to up to every 4 years or beyond for every Olympic cycle, and this is very normal. Plus, each layer you go in advance, you're actually spending more time in training, and it's going to require more work and focus and tonnage to actually get you any better, and your progress is going to be smaller. So you got to consider that as you go into this. So know where you're at in your focuses, and whether you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, and how long you've been doing this, and what your priorities and needs are, and why certain elements of the program are there, and why you should start to do them. Otherwise, things are going to be all over the place, and it's just random. And you really got to know when to push a certain exercise or when not to, or say when you're snatching clean and jerk are just sort of on maintenance at the time, and when you need to focus on something else, and why you might feel like shit in various phases, and know you're not getting worse. You know, our breakdown and our weakness in these periods are actually, and the slowness of PR attainment is actually a sign of progress. That means you're actually breaking your body down to where it can rebuild and become better and stronger. And the fact that your progress slows down is good, because it means you're not a beginner anymore, and you've taken the slack out, and it's going to be harder work to get new PRs, but that's good. That means you don't suck anymore. that's a good thing. So when you're breaking yourself down and you get weaker, that means the muscles that are associated with the snatch and clean and jerk are actually getting trained. And so for a better picture there, is you're pushing your squats and deadlifts or pulls, whatever, and your lifts tank. That's because those are relevant muscles to doing the Olympic lifts. When they're recovered and they're focused on getting beat up and trained, they cannot be applied to the Olympic lifts. So that's why we do this in phases and priorities, and it's not always squats and deadlifts and pulls and Olympic lifts just go up concurrently together forever. So there's definitely an organization that takes place throughout time, and you got to know where to put your focus into what as we go. But that's a very complicated structure and task, and that's why the communication and these notes are all taken. But now, hopefully this all makes sense. I'm going to give you sort of a breakdown, and I'm going to have sheets available for this. Maybe I'll have a link where you can print this up. This is for you only. Please do not share this with anyone. But our general blocks and phases here, we have 4 specific phases that we work with. And this, although we have a general structure to this, it changes all the time, and for every person this is going to look like something different. But here's the general core philosophy of what our focus is in each one of these levels and phases. So there's 4 waves. Wave 1, 2, and 3 are the ones you see us rotating all the time. And wave 1 is an accumulation/intro phase, and that's where you're getting doing more reps. You'll see 3, 5, 7, 9 or 10s, or for more an elite advanced lifter who's very good at, say, dialing into, say, 1 or fewer reps per set. The higher your training age is, the lower the reps you will respond to more appropriately, meaning 5 reps or less would be a high rep set. But that doesn't mean you're bad if you respond to 3, 5, 7, 9s, or 10s. It just is what it is, and so some people might just do better with 5s, and that might be their accumulation phase. So everyone's going to respond differently there. But so you're getting high rep type stuff. We're working on building a base for Olympic lifting and training, putting your GPP together, or general physical preparation for Olympic lifting and training. So we're doing a variety of different things. You might see more variety in this phase, and working on various elements structurally and positionally, basically. So just building raw strength and power for the phases to come. So squats will be, back squats will range between 5 reps and 10 reps, so on the higher end of the spectrum there. Front squats will be on the higher rep spectrum for them, so 3s is kind of a high rep set in front squats. You might see 5s, but never more than 5s. And sometimes we would drop the Saturday front squats because it's nice to put the front squats in there for a higher frequency on Saturdays as well as Wednesdays. But when you have the high volume back squats on Wednesday and Saturday, we're actually using back squats to drive as the primary driver, and it's going to take a lot of recovery to do those 2 of those high volume phases. So front squats are kind of on maintenance on Monday, and if you need to back off anything, that would be what to back off on. But if you can survive to get the 3, 2, 1 in on Saturday as well, that's fine, but that takes a long time and years to really adapt to and recover from. But for beginners, sometimes I may actually throw that in there just to give them more practice in the front squat to maintain the front squat position. So again, there's beginner to advanced variations of all this. So you might see more positional work in this first wave, so more pause squats, pausing pulls, those three-part pausing deadlifts, pulls you might see. So pause squats in the bottom are more important then. More block work, more hang work, more positional work, more non-specific Olympic lifts and variations of the actual lifts basically. So you'd still hit a daily rep maximum, but there should be less attempts and less misses. It's not the right time to really, miss 3 cleans. And let me get to that point. It's one thing to miss 3 snatches in a workout, and maybe a couple more if you're on that day, or going for a big PR. But it's another to miss 3 cleans, and really there should be a one miss clean limit, depending on what your issue or problem is. But the clean's not a very technical lift, and it's a lot more heavy weight. It's more about just how much pain can you handle for a few seconds here. And you're really throwing yourself under huge weight that you're risking a lot. There's a lot of pro and con to that, and you're risking more injury there with that lift. So you should really start to learn yourself and know, is this a reasonable lift? Can I make this or not? And if you missed once, okay, that was not even close, and you have no chance in help making it. Maybe a second chance is in order, but a third, you're kind of really getting ridiculous. So it's just something to consider, but that doesn't mean that we won't do that sometimes in places. Likewise, in the snatch, it's more technical, and you miss by a centimeter in the snatch, you can miss a lift. So that's why we have more range of freedom there. But if you're very awesome at getting under heavy weights, you're the person who's risking your chance for injury for taking too many attempts there. So know the difference. And when you're in a certain focus phase, and when you need to save that lift or attempt for whether it could be a base phase like this, and let's say it's a Monday and Wednesday, and you want to work on your squats and other positional and strength training work. Well, it's one thing to back off on those days and not take as many attempts, but save them perhaps for at least Saturday. And Saturday we might take more lifts and more attempts. But doing this every single day, that phase is not warranted, not appropriate at all, because it's going to really take away from your ability to push your strength training in your positional work. Snatch balances, overhead squats, pausing front squats, things like that. Work the block work and all those things that are going to make you better in the next phases. If you skip over those every phase and you never get a chance to clean up your problems, you're not going to see the progress cyclically like you should. So you're going to have lingering problems down the road. That doesn't mean you lose some maintenance of your specificity, which means you don't just stop doing snatch and clean and jerk. That doesn't mean that at all. That's your sport, and you need to practice that. It's just the amount of focus and priority you give to it, how much percentage of your time you give to it, how much your mental energy and effort that goes to that is what I'm talking about. So there's a big balance taking place. As we go to the next wave, which is the intensification phase, and each phase here is a roughly 2 to 4 weeks depending on the person and what's going on. But the average is 3 weeks, but they'll go from anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks depending on how you're responding. And the better notes and feedback I have from you will dictate that as well. But the more advanced you are, the faster you will go through these phases. So the next wave is more of a speed and power focus phase. So the squats and back squats range between 3s and 5s, so we're doing less reps per set there. Front squats become 2s and 2s and 1s, and that's where we try to maybe add that Saturday front squat in for most people if we can. It doesn't always happen. Again, it just might be 1 front squat day with 2 back squat days. It just depends on your work capacity and how much you can get in and how fast you're moving through the Saturday workout. And again, there's a million things that you can do. There's so much work that you can do. It almost depends on, can you spend 4 hours a day, 6 days a week doing this? Because the needs are vast and huge. And I hear people say, well, I can't stay here till 8 o'clock and this and that. And I get it. That's why my job is what it is, and I made the career that I have so I can train 6 days a week, 4 hours a day. And I still have more work that I could easily do. So there's many, many things you can do. It depends on what your goal is here and what you're after and how fast you want to get there, and how much you can commit to it, and then finally how much can you actually recover from, and how much is it really appropriate work. So so understand that. So how much you get done, how fast you get through the work, the less dicking around you do, and the better you take your notes, the more you get it. Like some lifters in there that are more experienced, you'll see that they're very good at getting into their daily 1 RM for the snatch, to their 1 RM for the clean and jerk, and not wasting time there getting it done because they got so many other things to work on. If you dick around with one lift for an hour and a half, you're not going to get to the elements required to actually make more progress. So then positional work becomes hangs and blocks for speed. So we start doing, so there's less pause type work with our positional and technique type work, but it just depends on the lifter and the time and place. And it'll be more from hangs and blocks, which hang and block work is a great speed strength element, and it means you actually have to you're going to be working on lifting the bar faster, and you're set up in strategic parts of the lift, like in a hang, to get more dynamic hip action. So you're going to be working a much faster version of the lift than you would from the floor if you have an inadequate use of the hip, basically. And you have to pull faster to get on the bar because you're not building up the same strength and momentum from the floor up. From the blocks, you have to pull faster because you don't have that. You're starting from a static stop at a higher point in the lift. So you have to develop the same amount of power to lift the same amount of weight. So what I'm saying is if you're trying to snatch 90 kilos off the floor and 90 kilos off a high block, you have to generate more power in less time to do it off the block than you would from the floor. So you're getting this hyper-focused amount of speed strength work in that one little small range, so you've got to react fast and explosively, and if you're off at all, you're not going to make it. But also the blocks, of course, we're working to work around positional errors. So if you're not good at transitioning around the knees, you don't have the right posture, things like that, we're working on getting you to be explosive at the hips and pull under and realizing where your technical breakdown is. So it's an awareness thing as well. But there'd be less pauses, less heavy pulls like the 3-part pausing or 2-part pausing deadlifts. For some people, you might see even less classical pulls, like less snatch and clean pulls. But the more advanced certain lifters get, the less of this positional work and auxiliary work we're doing in terms of hangs and blocks and stuff like that. If your technique is consistent and polished and you don't need hang work and block work, that stuff's very taxing on you and can beat you up and actually delay recovery, make your positions a little bit more painful and delay recovery for the next coming days. So I prefer to use the snatch and clean and jerk as technique maintenance because you already mastered and optimized that. And we're doing pulls to actually increase strength and power and overloading the pulls so you actually can become stronger with your pull because it's already dialed in tight and efficiently. And then working on strength work like squats. It's much harder to do snatches than hang snatches or the hangs and block snatches than squats than it is to do snatches than pulls than squats. But it depends on how much weight you're lifting and how heavy your pulls and things like that are. There's a million ways to do it. But you might even have a scenario where you're doing lifts, squats, then your pulls. It just depends. So hopefully that makes sense on the positional work and the difference in focus. Whereas before you might have done more pause work, maybe more complexes that are longer sets and that are requiring a lot more time under tension with the barbell and things like that. It'll be less specific, longer sets. There's probably going to be less weight on the bar in those preliminary phases in the base wave. So wave 3 would be the maximization phase, another 2 to 4 weeks, in some cases longer. So this is a very specific phase, so there's less variety and less auxiliary work in this phase. That's when we're going to start taking more attempts in the heavy lifts, where you might see the 10 by 1 in the snatch, where you see us going for PRs and going heavier and heavier. We're still going heavier in the squats and things like that. So the back squats range between 3s and 2s and 3s, 2s, and 1s. And front squats are 3, 2, 1s on basically Monday and Saturday if you're doing the Saturday day work there. We tried it. Some cases I will keep the pausing squats and things like that in there depending on the lifter. But a lot of times we're trying to pull that stuff out and pull out all this auxiliary work that we're working on and focus. This is more of the Bulgarian approach here, where it's more of that specific heavy 1RM type work for snatch and clean and jerk, and then squats and maximize everything. And this is really where we're peaking out on most of our lifts. Now, this is a strength cycle as well, so we're not always backing off on our squats and strength work. So this is where we are trying to kind of currently bring a lot of stuff together, and it's a very intense focused phase. But if you don't keep things very clean there, you start to get, that's where the tendons and tissues get really tight and aggravated because you're doing so many heavy lifts. So there's a balance there that you need to consider when you're going into that phase. Are you trying to push your squats? Are you trying to push your lifts? Are you going to try to push both? It's not easy to do them all. But that's why in our next cycle, which is wave 4, that you don't always see unless you're getting ready for a competition, which is our peak and taper. And the peak's roughly 2 to 3 weeks. The taper's about 1 week. And it all depends on the relevance of the competition, how big it is. And I tend to not have any good lifters peak more than twice a year. One big peak per year, 2 peaks per year at the most. Beyond that, it doesn't make sense to really peak for smaller meets unless you're just kind of breaking yourself in and you want to test yourself out. But this is where it's complete. So just like the last phase, it's almost identical to the last phase of the maximization phase, where the reps are 3 reps or lower, doing more specific heavy snatch and clean and jerk attempts, and less auxiliary and assistance work. But the biggest difference is intensity stays high. Some cases the volume drops in the Olympic lifts, but sometimes it goes up. So it depends on the lifter and their needs. We need to get you conditioned for doing the Olympic lifts. All the other phases in training that we've done up to this point is to prepare you for this period to be as best as possible. What does back off is the squats and strength training work. We've already peeled off a lot of the auxiliary strength training work. Squats are always going to be there, but this is where the squats are going to drop in intensity and volume. So we're not going to do as much heavy, hard banging squats. It's going to allow your tissues to recover. You're not going to feel like you've been hit by a car all the time, and you're going to be fast and explosive and snappy. You're going to feel like $1,000,000, and you're going to literally see 5 to 10 kilo jumps in your lifts because you're simply recovered and healed, We're not doing a lot of heavy, grindy type strength training work, so your muscles are not, and connective tissues are not stiff and tight, but you're training them to also be as fast and reactive as possible. So you have limit strength, like a heavy one-arm deadlift or heavy one-arm squat, then you have speed, which is jumping and explosiveness, and you have power in the middle, which is a combination of those two together, which is a function of speed and explosiveness, plus limit strength, which makes power, which is what the Olympic lift is all about. So we're taking all that limit strength you built and your technique and speed at training the lifts, and maybe if you do jumps and things like that, and pulls and powers and that work, comes together to make the ultimate blend of the Olympic lift in this taper and peak phase. So that all that comes together, and this is a very short period of time where you get to actually feel good and awesome and hit big heavy lifts. This will not last forever, and it's an expensive, timely process that you've put all this time in to accumulate and accumulate and accumulate and prepare for this phase. And it feels great and it's fun, but you lose that buildup of everything you've done to get there. So that conditioning, the volume and tonnage you put in to get there is very hard. And you ask Ken Bear about what happens when you take 1 week off. Everyone, balance and whatever and lifestyle, you should take time off and have a balance in your life. But if you want to be great at this, no, you don't. The point is, if you miss 1 week of squats, it's going to take you 1 week to get the next week's going to feel like crap, and you're going to have a drop in strength. It's mostly neurological, and then the next week you might get back to where you were the week before, and the third week you might actually get back to where you might be making progress again, and that's if things go well. So that's 3 extra weeks for taking 1 week off. 1 week off equals 1 month off of actual progress in good work, for the most part on average. Some people do better, and beginners tend to actually be able to bounce back sooner, but with any kind of significant training accumulation, you lose that whole process of 4 weeks. And consider if you're very elite, you might be losing much, much more time, because there's this huge drop off in order to put that taper and peak and focus into your Olympic lift. So peaking is an expensive process, and you want to make sure you plan this out well and time it out well. So don't waste that, and realize. So the goal here is, if you're used to squatting 200 kilograms for three reps, and that's heavy and hard for you, you'll see a drop in intensity to where it might be 180, 190 kilograms. So we dropped 10% roughly or something, and from there might even do back off sets and less sets and reps, just to keep that at maintenance, but also to keep the reps sharp and crisp and fast and clean, so you're not beat up, and when you recover you feel good, and you can hit your positions in the lifts very crisply and deeply, but fast and explosively as well, and it all comes together. So the classic lift volume, like I said, is usually would be the main focus, and you might see more in the snatch and clean and jerk sometimes, but some people will do less, just depending on how they're responding. This is a very specific phase. Intensity stays high. Volume drops for squats and auxiliary work. There's less variety in auxiliary work here, and like I said, squats and back squats are 3s, 2s, and 3s, 2s, 1s. Big picture review here. We've got 4 phases. The first wave is a big strength training focus, and it's where I don't care what your snatch and clean and jerk is, but I want you to practice it and work to 1RM. It's not the time where you're going to kill yourself and get plowed by heavy lifts. It's more of a Russian, Chinese kind of a focus phase where we're doing more variety, working on various angles and positional problems and issues. Then the second wave, we get a bit more focused. We work away some of the slower elements, so the slow heavy pulls, the pauses and stuff like that starts to be removed away. We get the faster type work, more specific type work. The reps in the strength training becomes around 3s and 5s. We're getting more specific power and strength training, as well as getting an increase in volume in our actual heavy snatch and clean and jerk tonnage. You might see big PRs and things like that in this phase, but it's really not the time to really put the pedal to the metal. We're always going to try to keep tension on the line in terms of keeping 90% plus type 1RM lifts on a day-to-day basis. I'm not saying we drop to 70% or below. You'll get weaker, and you will not. That's not specific training. To get good at a 1RM, 70% practice is not going to make you good at it. You need to work on your technical problems and issues with your light weights and lift them the same way as your 1RM, but still specificity-wise in your strength and your nervous system and all those things, and that specific preparation is as close to that 1RM as possible, unfortunately. But you got to balance out the risk-reward there and not be stupid and beat yourself up. The third phase, again, becomes the most specific next to the taper and peak, and it's the heaviest sets and reps, 3s, 2s, and 1s, a lot of singles, a lot more tonnage and volume in the Olympic lifts. This is more of a Bulgarian-ish phase, and we kind of do a blend of more variety early in these waves and get more specific as we go, and do more of a very watered-down Bulgarian approach at the end, and then we taper with that very specific approach when the time is right. So typically it's these 3 waves rotated over and over and over until you get to where you need a taper and peak. The taper and peak is not there at the end of every 9 to 12 week phase, basically. So hopefully this cleared all this up for you, and you can make the best decisions from this point forward and see the big picture really come together. And really consider where your PR train should really come and what your focuses should be on, and what your goals are with the sport in terms of whether you're beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and the PRs you might see in each one of those phases. Again, beginner might see daily, weekly PRs on pretty much everything. The intermediate's going to see it from weekly to monthly sort of cycle type PRs. And then the advanced lifters might not see them for several months to yearly, and the most elite might not see them for every 4 years. So please take the time to watch and digest all this, and if you have any questions, please ask.